Chapter 8. Kennedy Airport, quarter mile. Malone merely blinked as he saw the sign on the right side of the Van Wyck Expressway. The bulk of his attention was divided between driving carefully through the storm and listening to the flow of coded messages on the police radio. Though his car was equipped to pick up a wide range of commercial AM and FM stations, he always listened to the police frequency. It was more than a job or a custom. It was his natural habitat. He'd been born into this world. He was a third-generation New York cop. In 1914, a 13-year-old boy named Patrick Joseph Malone had migrated to New York with his family from a small town 50 miles south of Dublin. Pat Malone became a U.S. citizen and a policeman, happy to be both. The firstborn of his 8 children, Michael Peter Malone, was even more delighted to join the force in 1945. A month after he left the Marine Corps with 3 Purple Hearts for wounds received in the Pacific. Tough and enthusiastic, Mike Malone proved to be a first-class cop. He really was one of New York's finest. It seemed as if he had both a gift and a passion for this work. Nothing bothered him, nothing frightened him. Other cops talked with affectionate admiration about Big Mike Malone. His shrewd knowledge of street crime, his awesome appetite and matching thirst for beer, his directness, and his courage. It wasn't only his boldness and swift skill with a pistol that made hold-up men, burglars, and other thugs shun his beat. Quick-witted and intuitive, he had the instincts of a hunter and used them well in the urban jungle. It was almost as if he could smell where the criminals were. Having survived the bloody fighting on Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima, he confronted armed hoodlums without hesitation. Mike Malone made far more arrests than the ordinary foot patrolman. His extraordinary list of collars was noticed, so nobody in the NYPD was surprised when he was eventually promoted to detective and assigned to the Safe and Loft Squad. Nobody was that surprised by the way he died either. He didn't change that much when he became a plainclothes detective. He was still a hard-driving street cop and ex-Marine at heart. One winter night at a stakeout behind a fur warehouse, he went charging up an alley after a fleeing burglar. Big Mike Malone died with 2 bullets in his heart. Despite a determined and extended investigation, his killer was never caught. Frank Malone had been a skinny 12-year-old when his father was shot down. Now, 23 years later, he still remembered the terrible night clearly. That was why he hated snow. It had been in a storm like this that his father was murdered. It was the snow that had blurred his father's view of the alley. It was the snow that helped the faceless, nameless hoodlum kill him. Frank Malone would never forget how small his 6'1", 195-pound father had looked in the casket. New York had given Detective Michael P. Malone another citation for valor and an inspector's funeral. Hundreds of cops from 6 states had been there. Both the police commissioner and the mayor had come to express their condolences to the widow, her 5 children, and the 7 television news cameras. Then the municipal death benefit checks began and the media attention ended. Another cop was killed, then 2 more. 3 firemen perished a few months later. Before anyone knew it, the late Detective Michael P. Malone became last year's hero. Within 18 months, only the family, a few neighbors and friends, and 20,000 policemen and women remembered. They didn't forget their dead. It was a tribal thing. Shortly after Frank Malone's 17th birthday, his pious mother received a startling letter. Her thousands of sincere Hail Marys and Our Fathers had reached the Lord, who sent help through an organization she'd never heard of. The Jerome Mintzer Foundation had been created by some Jewish millionaire. A merchant prince whose generous gift threw off enough income to fund complete college educations for 5 or 6 children of police killed in the line of duty. One of those grants was now available. Frank Malone, Latin scholar and one of the top quarterbacks in the high schools of the Brooklyn diocese, had been hoping for a football scholarship somewhere. Now he startled his mother by applying to Harvard. There he excelled both academically and athletically, and he learned about a much larger and more diverse world than he'd known. Good-looking, amiable but disciplined, and highly intelligent without a trace of arrogance, Frank Malone was popular with faculty and students of both sexes. It didn't hurt that he threw a football as accurately as his father had wielded a pistol, playing a key role in 2 winning seasons. His instincts were nearly as good as his father's, and his thinking was better. It was both fascinating and thrilling to watch him coolly pick apart the other team's defense. "This policeman's brilliant son has the mind of a safecracker and the agility of a cat burglar," one sports writer reported. "He should do well as a tax lawyer." But Frank Malone didn't go to law school or any other graduate studies that could have kept him out of the armed forces. He went to Vietnam, won a Silver Star for gallantry, and turned down a regular commission and career. When he got home a month after the city once known as Saigon fell, he declined job offers from the Central Intelligence Agency and a conglomerate headed by his Harvard roommate's uncle. He had other plans. They startled everyone. He applied to be trained as a New York City policeman. With the help of his father's friends, he was accepted quickly and graduated from the academy at the head of his class. During all the months there, he never spoke about his father, college, his experience in Nam, or why a Harvard Phi Beta Kappa would want to be a cop. His mother had thought he did it out of family pride, but she wasn't entirely sure. JFK International. He saw the sign and turned off onto the curved multi-lane road that led to the huge airport's various terminals. He'd been happy as a rookie, enjoying the camaraderie and the work. He'd moved up the ladder steadily. On the way up, he disarmed pipe-wielding maniacs, talked down would-be jumpers, caught vicious rapists, broke up arson rings, arrested muggers and burglars and drunken drivers, busted 2 of the city's senior dope dealers, and earned a reputation as an excellent homicide detective. He'd been shot by fleeing bank robbers. In 3 violent confrontations, his .38 Special had dropped criminals trying to kill him. Those men had all survived. The word spread through the department. Frank Malone didn't shoot to kill. Some said that he was such a good marksman that he didn't have to. Others had different opinions. Everyone respected him as a cop's cop who didn't lie, grandstand, or play departmental politics. Now he was commander of the New York Police Department's elite anti-terrorist unit, an unusual assignment for one of the youngest captains on the force. One reason he'd been given the complex and highly sensitive job was his record of solid achievements. Another was the sophisticated style that let him get along so gracefully with foreign diplomats, self-important public officials, and legislators, and even sometimes difficult FBI people. Only last week, the commissioner had complimented his human relations. Sheila Malone didn't rate them that highly, he reflected as he peered through the snow for the turnoff to the International Arrivals building. He'd met her the week she'd come east to study at the Actors Studio. After 9 years of wedlock, she had realized that her husband really meant to stay a cop, despite the danger and the mediocre salary. She had returned to her parents' luxurious home in the fashionable California community that Frank Malone called the Amaretto Ghetto, Malibu by the sea. That had been 11 months ago. She had taken their daughter with her to provide a more stable childhood than the girl could expect in the home of a man foolish enough to risk his life every day. Kate Malone hadn't seen her father since early July, and he was on his way to meet her at Kennedy when she got off TWA Flight 22. He was worried. Not about his wife's recent application for an annulment to end the marriage. He couldn't think of anything to do about that. He had tried to hold things together, but they'd been growing apart for several years. What troubled him was the separation from his only child. It hurt him deeply, and she must be suffering too. Though he told himself that it wasn't his fault, he was racked with all the anxieties and ghostly guilts of every caring non-resident father. She was coming in for Christmas, 7 days together. Was this what it was going to be like? A week together now and then? Would she blame him for the separation? Would she blame herself as children often did? Would pain and helpless anger, time and distance drive them apart forever? Would she someday call another man father? It had happened to 2 of Frank Malone's friends. He'd seen it tear them to pieces. He recalled grimly as he swung the green sedan into the parking lot. Looking at his watch, he saw that he was 10 minutes late for his appointment in the control tower. That wasn't too bad for this weather, and he could still get over to TWA's terminal in time. When he parked the car and stepped out into the falling snow, his stomach tightened involuntarily. He was known for his cool logic and self-control, but he couldn't help his body's reaction. It remembered the night that Detective Michael Malone had been shot down in that alley. Maybe it always would. Captain Frank Malone shrugged and walked through the slow stream of cars to the entrance of the International Arrivals building. As he reached the safety of the sidewalk, he noticed the small white panel truck directly in front of the main entrance. That was a no parking area, so the truck must be something special. Now he saw the name Mount Sinai Hospital lettered on one side of the vehicle and nodded. It must be here on some medical mission. It was perfectly all right to park a hospital vehicle here for a while. There couldn't be any crime in that.